in the moment, it didn't feel like any of it was cool. I can tell you that much. In the moment, it was extremely scary, and I wasn't sure what was even really going on, to be honest. Like I said, I felt like I was trying to find my mind for a moment, and that was just terrifying to me because I was like, shit, like I don't want to lose my mind. Like I don't want to be I was thinking like I don't want to be a different person for the rest of my life. Like I want to be this person who I am right now, you know, or whatever that means.
You are listening to the Boundless Enigma podcast with Sam Zins
and Ryan Mulkentine. On this podcast, we dive into the mind, reality, and existence itself to provide you with boundless ideas and insights. Okay, so we were just talking about your edible experience for the Super Bowl and how crazy it was.
Yeah, way too high, that's for sure. And I was telling Ryan I plan to take a little bit of a break. I don't know how long. Maybe it'll be prolonged. I don't know. And just kind of assess my life and kind of, I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know. But
it was such an intense weed experience that you now like it's like giving you such an intense, raw, new perspective that you need to process it.
Yeah, exactly. It was very raw, and like there was so much that happened. I feel like, as a matter of fact, let me pull out my phone real quick. I didn't write a lot, but I wrote what I was thinking, or I typed, I should say, to kind of remind myself of where I was at. And I don't mind sharing it. So, okay. So I wrote, tonight was Super Bowl. At my friend's house, Chiefs won versus Eagles. I had to mention that. I ate an edible and got way too high. I was freaking out, thinking I was losing my mind. I've already been dealing with this questioning before, and what reality is, and the edible amplified it. I've learned to remain calm and not overthink things so much because all will be fine. I'm just in the process of learning it. It's okay to not feel good at times. And I said I was feeling loopier earlier, but I started feeling better. So, in part of this process that I learned was that when I got back to my house, I was laying down talking to my girlfriend, and we were just talking, and that helped a lot. Just talking about random things and just what was going on in my mind, whatever it may be. Like for a minute, we were talking about NFL refs, like, but it felt good in that moment, and it was almost like this like placeholder for my mind to kind of retract itself and kind of figure out like, okay, like I'm here, you know, like this is happening.
You became like so detached from like your usual sense of self, and like your normal like conscious environment is like shifted so far out that like just you needed to like talk about anything that could help ground you again back to like coming back to wherever that normalcy is.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And part of who I am is the type of person that I don't want to veer away from the truth. And that's kind of what I felt like I was doing. So I think that was part of my issue, is that I really wanted to stick it out and like bask in this truth that was happening, and the truth being just seeing things extremely raw and not being afraid to be honest with myself and others about it. But I think I got to a point where it was better for me to chill out for a minute and and ground myself.
Dang. That reminds me of psychedelics. It just reminds me, I think you had such an intense weed trip that it became psychedelic in a way. Because that's kind of what psychedelics feel like. And that like they give you such a new perspective and such a raw, intense perspective. Like it shoves it in your face.
Yeah.
That like you've never seen it before, and it freaks you out because you're like, holy crap, not only is this a new perspective, but it's fucking real in my face.
Yeah, like just experiencing it is just wow. Like it's something that you've never quite realized to that degree. Like you may have realized it. Like I feel like the things that I've experienced, I've thought before and I maybe realized, but never actually experienced. And I feel like that night I actually experienced it, which is a whole different ball game sort of thing.
Wow. That's crazy. That sounds like a psychedelic experience for sure.
Yeah, is it possible to have a psychedelic experience on PhD?
Yep, absolutely, dude, for sure.
Okay, I should do my research because I didn't actually know that was a thing.
Totally. I mean, what is? Let's look up like what does it mean? Like, I think psychedelic just means it doesn't have like a specific definition.
That's fair.
Like I think like a lot of things can be psychedelics. Okay, relating to or denoting drugs that produce hallucinations and apparent expansion of consciousness.
I can't say I got hallucinations, but I definitely got the expanded.
Well, now let's look up the definition of hallucination, because because there could be multiple ways of defining hallucination. Because like one definition, hopefully my microphone isn't too loud. I feel like I might be talking kind of loud, but
no,
so Google says that a hallucination is an experience involving the apparent perception of something not present. But I don't know. Like, I feel like there are like minor hallucinations you can have that are like just altered perception. You know what I mean? Like you see something in a way that's like different than you would usually. I think that's a hallucination. Like if you were to like when you're really high and you're like staring in one spot and you see things kind of like strangely, it just looks like off and like a different, you see it's like more vibrant or something or more intense or like just, it just looks like weird. Like that to me, I would say that's a hallucination.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then I definitely experienced something similar to that. I mean, I was looking at my girlfriend and I was just looking at her like, whoa, she didn't look more vibrant. She looked more like I could see every like facet of her in a sense.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what my reality was like, not just with her, but I specifically remember it with her because, it's a human and that just was like vastly different, and wow, it was like a hallucination then.
Dang. Have you had like an intense experience like that before on weed?
I feel like there was one time where I was starting to, but then I caught myself and calmed myself down before I got to a point where I started to where like what happened this past time where I started to experience this stuff. I feel like I caught myself and kind of kept myself grounded the entire time for the previous one that I had like that. But like I said, there was one time where yes, I felt like I was getting to that point, but I didn't let myself. But I don't know.
Wow. Well,
what about yourself?
Okay, so it was like it was a frightening experience.
Yeah,
but you also said that like you were like seeing every variable of like people and things and like attitude, like everything that was going on, like you saw kind of in a new light, in a different way. Do you think like what were some cool things that you, even though in the midst of the frightening experience, like what cool things did you find in it that you were like that you saw? Like
looking back on it?
Yeah. Can you remember?
Yeah, because like in the moment, it didn't feel like any of it was cool. I can tell you that much. In the moment, it was extremely scary, and I wasn't sure what was even really going on, to be honest. Like I said, I felt like I was trying to find my mind for a moment, and that was just terrifying to me because I was like, shit, like I don't want to lose my mind. Like I don't want to be I was thinking like I don't want to be a different person for the rest of my life. Like I want to be this person who I am right now, or whatever that means. But looking back, yeah, I definitely realized that I was just like, the way I think of growth is like you sometimes have to walk into like these mines, like land mines, and figure out what it's all about. And that experience felt like I was walking into mine after mine after mine. Like I just kept falling into these landmines. And I had probably the biggest thing that I learned from it was that I just need to be more honest with myself and others about how I feel, and not try to hide that, because like I like to think of myself as being an open person and express how I feel with honesty. But I think I caught myself for that first 15 minutes of of being high. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to bother anybody. I wanted to just try to bear it out with myself. But then I finally told my girlfriend, like, hey, let's go outside. And the moment I did that, it clicked with me, like, oh, I feel so much better. Like I actually expressed how I feel, and I didn't try to hide from it and try to like make it into something else,
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably the biggest thing I learned. But I could probably come up with so many other things.
Okay. So something like that, like I heard that was pretty profound, I guess, was like you felt like you were afraid that you weren't going to come back to yourself again.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you heard of like ego death?
I've heard of that, yeah.
And okay. So in one theory of enlightenment, it says that we are not our bodies, we're not our personality, that we are like something greater, that we are like whatever divine presence like that's in this universe, this whole universe or whatever, is actually, we're just the universe experiencing this human being right here. And our suffering comes from our identification with ourself, with ourself, that we basically, it says that like we're mistaken for thinking that I as an individual exist, and that we're actually not. Like it's a really, really radical perspective, that how could I not be me? How am I not this human being named Ryan? But people on intense psychedelic trips can have experiences where they start to lose they start to lose themselves. They start to lose their identities. And if you have a strong enough psychedelic trip, you can just obliterate your ego. You can you start to then merge back into the universe itself and into nothingness, into everythingness. And it's if you're in the spot before ego death, but you're being threatened, if your ego is being threatened, it can be a really scary experience, because I also believe that I am this body, that like this is who I am, and that if I am not this human being, then I am dead, then I'm nothing. But it's possible to experience your identity as something greater than your human body. That the I that you refer to is not this. The I now becomes everything. That is what I becomes. It becomes the thing that holds the body, the thing that holds everything. Like, I don't know. I haven't. Okay, honestly, I have experienced something similar. I've experienced something where like I detached from my body before. It sounds crazy, and it's a really radical perspective, but I don't know. Like I think I just know I've heard of a ton of trip reports of people like having their ego die, and then they're still alive. I mean, the human organism is still alive, but their sense of self just like is gone, and they're just like perceiving, and that's all they are. It's just perceiving.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I feel like I don't even know what to think of that, of that perspective of of life. You know, it's like, because we think of having a good life as, you know, moving on in life, getting a good job, having kids, all these other things. And you don't ever hear somebody like saying like, oh, a good life is, having an ego death and, realizing that you're just perceiving and that life is essentially pointless, like you don't hear this kind of stuff. So I feel like it kind of creates this stigma. I guess maybe this is maybe an inner stigma or stereotype that I kind of created for myself, that like this isn't something that you want, or this is something that is scary. But in reality, it's not scary. It's simply reality, and it's just how things truly are. And if you want to figure out how things truly are, you can probably get the things in life that you might want to get or have, relationship wise or material wise,
And like ego death in it is both painful and scary and also like liberating, because if you think about ego death, like you're grieving yourself essentially. You're dying in your mind. You're dying. You think that like you're losing your sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
You're losing, like you're afraid that you're not going to get back to being able to be this human named Sam with his personality.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're afraid of that, and so you're kind of in this process of like dying in a sense, and so that's scary and frightening, and you want to hold on to it. But on the other side, once you die, then like there's no more fear. There's no like everything is just you're just in peace, and like you're just existing at that point in peace, and then you're in absolute freedom after ego death.
Yeah, that I like what you just said there. Because that is what life is. It's a process of dying, and we're all closer to dying than being alive, or being born or whatever. We're all in the process of dying, and I think that's something maybe we don't all realize. Like obviously we all realize that, oh, maybe I'll live to 80, 90, 100, something like that, and then I'll die. Like I think that's a general consensus of what people would probably think of death. But they don't think about the fact that there's so many variables along the way that could happen to you, and you could die at this very moment, or all these other things, and just like little injuries or whatnot. Like that's you, like parts of you that are dying. And I think that's part of what I realized is that there's like we are humans that are, we call ourselves humans, but we're really just part of everything, and everything works off of everything, and that's it. Everything just works
all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I realize it.
The atoms that make you up,
like
they abide by the same laws of physics as the chair that you're sitting in.
Yeah.
And the nitrogen in your cells, when you die and decompose, will then that exact same atom that's in your nose right now in a cell will decompose, and then it'll become part of a fungus that's decomposing you. And then a plant will take up that nitrogen. And over the course of millions of years, all of the atoms inside of you will spread out across the world, and eventually in billions of years, it'll spread out across the universe. It's like what makes you special? Like you're just a conglomeration of atoms and matter that was once in other things, and part of the ground and part of the air and part of a meteor that has somehow created you, is now part of you. But then it's like you're just a phase in the universe's cycle of creating and destroying with matter.
Yeah, that's like super profound. Like super profound. And that's the kind of truth that I love to experience, but it's also the kind of truth that is sometimes hard to accept, because it's basically saying that, what you do here in life is pretty pointless. And that I don't take it that way, but I feel like at first it kind of felt like that, and it kind of scared me off for like a month or so, like of even trying to think about this kind of stuff. Like when I first started trying to think of this kind of stuff, this stuff being truth. But now I'm kind of at a point where it's like I want to delve into this stuff, but I think maybe what I need to realize also is that if I want to understand what I'm diving into, I need to take things a little slower with myself and kind of formulate what's going on and not just dive headfirst blindfolded into it. Because that's what it felt like the other night. That's what it felt like. I felt like I just dove headfirst blindfolded into a pit of truth.
Yeah. Dang. And it's like, if you could like take little bits of that experience of like little bits of truth and then like process and little bits of truth and then process and little bits and process, you would like know. I feel like that would be a much better way to go about it than like, I mean, sometimes though, like a psychedelic experience can give you like truth that regular life can't, but it can also be so intense that it can be counterproductive. Yeah,
because I've never taken a psychedelic, but I have heard how it just it like forces you down this path that you're thinking, and it can in some cases, or I don't know the exact amount, but in some cases help you just discover these things and come to peace with it almost, because it doesn't need to be a scary thing.
Dang. But in the moment, it's so intense that it can have like lasting effects. Like that intensity will like, it like continues. It has a momentum to it. Like you remember it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
like whether that be good or bad. Sorry, I don't mean to keep cutting you off. But like there's like, you can have a good momentum or you can have a bad momentum, where like you have a profound experience of truth and it's like pleasurable and good, and then when you're out of the trip, you continue. Now you have this like true like new perspective for life that's good. But if you have a really frightening experience, those psychedelic experiences or on edibles can be so frightening and intense that it'll continue to make you kind of like afraid of the universe. You're like, oh my god, like the universe is fucking powerful. Holy shit. Yeah. It needs to be respected. You know?
And I think the way to respect it is by taking the time to understand it. Because when you understand it, you learn how to respect it. And I think that's a process that I'm in, like as of right now, is recognizing what I have learned and not getting too ahead of myself, and not because like you said, you can have those experiences where it's like it makes you terrified of the universe and life and your mind and everything in between. Or you could take that experience and decompress and slow down and recognize what's happened and not be so terrified about it, because now you understand, oh, I just discovered some things. And I think that's what I have right now. I have this huge backpack of stuff that I discovered, but I just haven't gotten to look at yet. And like I have looked at it, but I've only looked at it once, and that was when I was experiencing it. And now I need to reassess it and think.
Wow. Yeah. I think there's totally a value in slowing down. I think that's like really important. Like really all the time slowing down is important to help with like processing and just rejuvenating in general. But when you have such an intense experience like that, you definitely need to like give yourself a little break and like give yourself the time to figure out what that even was. Because I'll have like my last trip, I was doing shrooms about a year ago. And it was like a really intense trip for me. It was very like, it was just like I experienced like every emotion and like feeling and just very intensely. Like I felt joy, I felt sadness, I felt like dread, I felt like everything.
Yeah.
And it was just such an intense, raw experience. But then like afterwards, I was still like thinking about it for like weeks afterwards, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, like that's what that meant. Like that was like this part of the trip was showing me this. And like in the moment, it just all felt very intense, and it was like jam packing all of this raw truth into like 3 hours. And then like over the course of the following days and weeks, I was like, oh, like this meant that. And like, I know why this felt really intense to me, because it was showing something about my personality. Like one thing that I came to realize was that I have a very feminine side to me. That's a very gentle and loving and like feminine side that I have been like rejecting. And because society wants me to be masculine, because I'm a man, or at least I thought society wants that. That was my perception of society.
Yeah.
But in the moment, in my trip, I was looking in the mirror at myself, and I just had like a really intimate look, and I just saw like this girly, like gentle, like side of myself that needed to be like protected and loved. And it's like this inner child in me and I was just like, wow, like I have so much love for this person in the mirror that I'm looking at right now. And I wanted to like make love with myself. Like I felt like, you know what I mean? Like it was just so intimate. I was like, oh my gosh. A week later, I was like, that's a part of me. I'm literally like, that is part of who I am. I am gentle. I need to be loved. Like, yes, I have a disagreeable side to me that's very like mean sometimes and like authoritative, but that's like just a part of me as much as the feminine side of me is a part of me that needs to be loved and looked after. And I didn't realize that until like days later.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's the way, what I hear you saying is you were very honest with yourself in the mirror at that moment, and in recognizing that,
Yeah.
instead of, carrying on with how you maybe normally would have and try to maybe mask that feminine side and
Yes.
in this
But it
masculine.
was so unconscious. It was so unconscious. Like that feminine side to me, that gentle side, has always been there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's always been there, but when I'm not in a psychedelic state, it would be so easy to just like pretend like it didn't exist and like keep being masculine, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then something about being in the psychedelic state like gave me the opportunity to hold that perspective for longer. I don't know why it does it, but like I didn't reject that side of myself in that moment, and like it let it exist for long enough that I like recognized it, that it was a part of me.
Yeah, that's super cool that you like basically allowed yourself. Well, I guess through psychedelics, that it allowed yourself to experience that instead of trying to mask it like you would have normally done, and it allowed you to open up and feel whatever you felt, and not try to act like you're not feeling it at all, or even trying to minimize it or anything like that. Because I think that's something that I think that's very similar to what I experienced with being honest with myself. Like I was saying about being honest with myself and others, is I allowed myself, similarly to you, to just feel and be okay with needing help, or in your case, experiencing your feminine side, or anything else of that nature, and just not caring, not caring about what society thinks of that certain situation, and not caring what even one other person thinks, and just forgetting about all that and just doing what you want to do and thinking what you want to think, because that's super hard.
It's like, I think that substances can oftentimes like open floodgates in our minds that like just can't be stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Like it gives like your emotions way more power than like you would have not on a drug. Like it gives like the force, like just the sheer power of like a thought can be just infinitely more intense on a substance than in a sober state. It's just like it opens up a floodgate and you just feel powerless and you get washed away in it, and you are powerless. You just have to float in it.
Yeah, because if you don't float, then you're resisting, and that resistance is what can make things go sideways. Like in my experience, I like there were parts of my experience where I felt like I was floating, and then there were parts where I felt like I was trying my hardest to swim. And definitely in those moments where I was floating were the moments where I felt most honest with myself and others, and it made me feel better because I was being honest. And I think that feeling came from just recognizing that it's okay to be at this certain state, and who cares if anybody else is here? Who cares if people think I'm weird for it or don't like that I'm here? Like, I don't care at all about any of that because I'm here, and that's just how it was in that moment. But obviously, easier said than done when you're in a state of mind where you feel rambunctious like that.
Yeah. Dang.
But the cool part
crazy.
about these things that we've experienced is that while we have experienced them on substances, you can experience this same stuff off of substances, and be high on life, basically.
True.
And I think that's kind of what I'm going to try to be learning here soon, or I'm in the process of, is just learning how I don't need anything to be what I'm or do what I'm doing. I can just figure it out right now, or look into it, I should say.
That makes me think of like what it would be like to be in the trenches of World War One.
Yeah.
And think of like how intense that would be.
Jeez.
And how like that, like your life is in danger. There's probably like so many thoughts going on, and like your emotions are just going crazy, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't like, this state of mind or these intense emotions they're not like only with psychedelics or substances. Like, this is just like, it just shows you what the human mind is capable of experiencing, because like you can experience intense, like super, super intense stuff, non-substances, obviously, like traumatic things, and you can experience super blissful things not on substances that are just absolutely awesome. People, I don't know, some amazing guru somewhere probably knows how to meditate in a way that'll make you feel amazing.
Yeah.
I want to learn from him, whoever that is.
Yeah, I'll tag along too if you ever do that. But meditation does, it does feel that way. Like, maybe not to the extent of being on a substance in terms of my experience, but it is very euphoric and just blissful and raw. I feel like I've not meditated enough to even be able to speak on behalf of what it could do. But based off of what I have seen it do, it's just like, wow, this is something that I wish I did more of. And I feel like there's a better way that I could put that, but I wish I did more of it.
So do you feel like humbled after that experience?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Absolutely. It showed me that I just don't know. I don't know much at all, and that's in a good way, not a bad way. Like seriously, like I don't know anything, and it also showed me that nobody else knows anything either. You know, nobody knows
Yeah.
the half of it. And even if they do know the half of it, you know, like gurus or people who meditate a lot, you know, like they're still figuring it out too. And I don't want to say that you can't get to a point where, you know everything, or like recognize everything that there is to recognize, because for all I know, there is. But at this moment, it just seems so far off. And that kind of shows me or tells me that I just don't know anything right now. But
Anyone that like says that they do know everything or they're like arrogant, they're deluding themselves.
yeah,
They're completely deluding themselves. They want to think they know everything, but no, not even close. Not even close.
yep,
And I think I think the only way to like get to a place of like knowing more is to just say I know absolutely nothing, and then sitting in the nothingness and just like, okay, this is like where I am. I don't know anything, and we'll see what comes in. We'll see what information comes in next.
yeah. One of the craziest things that like by doing nothing has taught me in my lifetime is that I didn't even know how much I was thinking, and I still don't recognize it all the time, like not even close to all the time. But meditating taught me that I think, I think a lot, not just sometimes, not just in a certain moment, all the time, constantly. And it's not that I'm just thinking about one or two things. It's like many things all the time. And meditation has taught me this, and it's just incredible because without meditation, I don't know how. I mean, I'm sure I maybe could have came across it somehow, but I don't know how I would have figured out how much I was thinking. And by recognizing that, I think a lot has taught me that I don't need to think that much. I can be in the moment more.
Yeah,
And
the
society
moment
use that.
when you are present in the moment without thinking, it just opens up a possibility to learn so much more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, just being in a state of like openness and presence allows you to start taking in whatever comes your way without, because if you're thinking, you're like putting your mental construct on things. You're like trying to like analyze it, or like make comparisons and judgments about this thing that you're observing or this thing in the present or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can be present and like minimize your thoughts, you'll start to see things as they are more, without judgment, and maybe see things in a more pure, raw way.
Yeah, and that's the goal. To see things as pure and raw as possible, to better your patterns of life, I suppose, and try to, I don't want to say try to get somewhere, because I don't think there's like any specific destination. In our minds, I think that we all have destinations that we'd like to be, but in reality, there is no specific destination that's made just for you, or that you should go to, or anything of that nature. I could, I'm into psychology right now. For all I know, I could just, or not for all I know, I could just flip around and become an aerospace engineer, like there's no specific destination. Like you can do anything if you want to do it. It's just based on our upbringings and life experiences. It has drawn us to this certain point. And that certain point isn't necessarily the right or wrong point. It's just a point, and we can choose what we want to do with that point. We either keep going on that path, or we change it. It doesn't matter at all.
Right. Can I share with you what my direction is right now? What I'm like being pulled towards?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
So, what I'm being pulled towards is working on my website, Nurture Your Spirit.
Okay.
And what I'm working on is I'm working on a pretty cool new tool. I don't want this to be too loud. I'm always afraid that I'm talking too loudly.
Oh no, I think you sound fine.
Okay, good. So something I'm working on right now. I'm going to share my screen again for those watching on YouTube.
All right.
Okay, we're going to share. Okay. So this is my website, nurtureyourspirit.org. And I'm working on a tool called My Guru that connects spiritual seekers and students to spiritual gurus, or to teachers, or to meditation teachers, or to life coaches, or yoga teachers, or whatever your specialty is. Like, I've made this directory on my website, nurtureyourspirit.org, and this directory tool is called My Guru. And I already have someone that has listed themselves on here, which is pretty cool, actually.
That is really cool.
Can you see this? Are you seeing this?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Good. Okay, sweet. And I just feel like there's like a gap between, like, because I feel like I at one point was searching for a spiritual teacher, for a mentor, because I want to dive into that. I want to get better at it. I want to live more freely and alive and dive into the spiritual aspect of this world. And I couldn't find one. I didn't know where to look. I didn't know where to go, you know?
Yeah.
And so I created this tool I want to be able to connect more people with mentors. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude, that's such a cool concept, and a very good idea that I agree with. You know, I can't say I've ever been on like a search for one, because I feel like I've come across just a couple people that I clicked with, but I can see the value in it. And I mean, even now, I mean, I could find value in that. I mean, I would never be against chatting with somebody who is a guru in some element of meditation or whatnot. So yeah, dude, that looks awesome. It's coming along pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still working out like what exactly I want to do with it. And you see, I listed myself on there because I am a meditation instructor. So I figured, hey, if someone wants to learn or wants to go through a guided meditation with me, like, I'd be down to help. I'd be down to guide them through a meditation. But
yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I'm just thinking like this could be not only a really helpful thing for the spiritual seekers and the spiritual mentors, but it could also drive a lot of traffic to my website, and it could like set me up for, I don't know. I think I want to make this site like a space for spirituality and just like knowledge of how to dive into that world. And I don't know. I just feel my energy is like getting pulled towards this website, and I just feel like there's potential here.
Dude, that's awesome that you found that niche that you really like. And just a thought that I've had while you were saying that was, having a spot to start, I think, is something that I struggled with at first with my spiritual path. And if I had something like your website in my bank, that probably would have helped a lot. Just seeing like, okay, like, I don't know, what's the first step, or like, how do I even begin?
Yeah, exactly. How do you begin? What are you supposed to do?
Shoot, that's a valuable question. I would say, looking back, what I would tell myself that didn't know where to begin, I'd say just try meditating and just start and journal and just go with the flow. Do it how you want to do it, and don't put too much pressure on it, and just do it. Just do it as often as you can. And I think that's my best advice. What would you say?
I think I would tell my younger self, like, trust your intuition and like trust like your natural desires and like pull towards things, like your natural curiosity to like when something pops up that you want to investigate, that you want to go research, that you want to go like meditate on or something or think about, like trust that and go in the direction that you feel pulled towards, and you'll find the things that you're in, like that you're looking for essentially.
That's a good
and
point.
You'll learn and readjust along the way.
Yes, that's very important, the readjusting. Because I think that's something that I got caught up with at first, was thinking that I had to do it a certain way, like where do I begin, where's the finish line, all these different things. But it's like, no, it's just a matter of doing it and then finding out what works for you and how to do it the way that you like to do it.
Yeah.
And like you said, just readjusting along the way.
The finish line is an illusion. There's no finish line. There's never a finish line.
No, there's not. And that's also what's so fun about it too. That's what's so fun to me about doing this kind of work and just working on myself, is just knowing that I don't have any pressure to get to any point. I'm just doing this because I want to discover truth and just be a better person.
Wow. That's like really, I don't know. That's cool. I've never thought of it like that really until like you said that.
Really? Like just
there's no pressure.
Yeah.
There's no pressure to get anywhere because there's nowhere to really, there's no finish line. There's no finish line to get to. You just keep going and it doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't. And I feel like by not having that kind of pressure on yourself, you discover so much more because you're not trying to get to the end of, like you're saying, the finish line is an illusion. You know, you're not trying to get there. You're just doing things and figuring things out as you go.
Yeah. Wow.
It's so fun. That's what makes life fun.
Sure. And those readjustment points along your intuitive path are so fun and cool and new, and like the novelty aspect of each readjustment is like there's always something new and cool to learn, and with every readjustment it's like a whole new world, and you're just like, wow, like I never thought of this. I didn't think I could follow this path.
Yeah, and
that's cool.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. This just made me think of what you were just saying. Reminded me of something that I discovered the other night, and that is that like every decision you make in your life jolts you on this direction, this path. And let me explain what I mean by this. So me and my girlfriend were talking about how I met her because I knew there's these twins that were at my school in high school, and they were friends with her, and I didn't specifically meet her through them, but it definitely helped that I knew them, you know, just comfort wise and just getting to know them and whatnot. And anyways, I went to a different high school my freshman year, and if I would have never gone to this new high school, who knows where I'd be right now. You know, I maybe I wouldn't have ever met my girlfriend. And but that's just one example of many that happen. And who knows, maybe I wouldn't have my core friend group that I have right now. They all went to my high school that I went to for 3 years. And who knows, maybe I won't be as close with them. And all these possibilities, the possibilities of these changes and just different directions of life are endless and are constantly happening, like second by second throughout the day. Constantly.
Yeah. Every second, even in this exact moment of what sentence I could speak next, there's literally an infinite number of sentences I could speak.
Yeah.
And what if the next sentence I speak is the most profound you've ever heard in your life?
Exactly.
And you don't know.
And that's why meditation is so important, because it trains you to pick how you want to think, essentially, and guide yourself through life instead of living under the turmoil of a monkey brain and just like constantly rapidly thinking and not knowing that you're even thinking. And then, you're thinking all these negative thoughts and things that just push you down these spirals of bad behaviors and just feelings and anything in between, rather than meditating and discovering that you have these thoughts and trying to fix them and try to live a healthier life in that aspect and it'll help you feel better and perform better.
So meditation gives you, like, in the long run, it gives you more possibilities and choices because you're freeing yourself from the automatic processes of your mind.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the best thing that we can do for ourselves is just set ourselves up to be in the best position to push ourselves into that next position.
I haven't, like, hardcore, like, sat down and meditated for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do find myself doing is, like, I feel like I have a mindful 5 minutes, like, every day doing something.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm out walking somewhere, like, I'll like remind myself, like, oh, like, I need to be present right now. And then, like, for that 5-minute walk, I'll just be so in tune with, like, the present moment and, like, let go of my thoughts and, like, just trying to feel my senses, see, hear.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't know. And that to me feels really good because I feel like I'm not, like, pressuring myself. I'm not being, like, a dictator to myself. Like, you need to meditate. Yeah. But I'm also, like, practicing my mindfulness muscle and, like, allowing myself the presence, Yeah.
And it almost, like, maintains that mindfulness muscle, like you said, it like maintains that, so that if you do choose to start getting back into meditation or being more mindful more often, it kind of keeps you in tune with that. And because for me personally, I feel like I weave in and out of what you were just talking about, where, like, there will be a long time where I'll just, every day I'll probably have, like, a mindful 5 minutes or so. But I won't be meditating at all. But then once I hop back into meditation, I'm ready for it. Like, I know how to do it, right. It's always a good experience. And I think it's a product of just working on that over time, that muscle.
There's definitely value in, like, sitting down and meditating. Like, there's totally value in that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's also, like, but people's idea of meditation is wrong. If you think meditation is only sitting down and, like, traditionally meditating, I think that's wrong. I think it's a wrong idea to have. I think you can meditate doing anything all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I think a word that sounds better for me is mindfulness. But it's like meditation mindfulness. I guess it's up to interpretation, but you can like be mindful and meditate in the shower while you're cleaning the dishes. I mean, there can be so much joy in mindfully cleaning the dishes. Like, something that I dread doing now becomes, like, pleasurable because I'm feeling the warm water and suds and gunk all over my fingers. Like, it's nice. It turns, like, nice.
And that's the power of mindfulness. You can, like I was just talking about a few minutes ago, about how you can, like, either send yourself down this negative spiral of emotions. Like, you could be washing those dishes thinking, like, oh, this is so gross. Like, oh, it's so grimy, and, like, looking away, like, trying not to smell any of it, like, and just, like, not enjoying your time. Or you could be mindful and be like, you know what, this is just, I got warm water, I got soap and suds, I'm cleaning these dishes for me to use for food tomorrow or whatnot, and that's, like, a whole new perspective on this task at hand that you would have to do either way. So why not do it the way it's more productive and exciting?
True. And also, why is it suddenly gross to touch this old food in this pan when that food is just as old and it's inside your body right now?
That is so true. Think about that.
It's like the hair, your girlfriend's hair. It's nice, it's beautiful. You want to touch it, it's great. But suddenly, when it's on the floor, it's disgusting.
Or, like, when it's, like, on your hand or something, you're like, ugh.
But it's like nothing has really changed. It's just out. it's just not on someone's body anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good example of like just something so random but so tiny that throughout the day adds up. There's so many of those tiny like yucky experiences throughout the day, or just like painful experiences, annoying experiences, things that anger you, like all these things. You can just decide to look at them a different way, and all of a sudden they're a totally different emotion attached to them.
It makes you wonder, like, how many other things are just perspective.
Yeah,
it's like if just that thing about the hair thing, it's like how many other things that I get angry about, that I am disgusted by, that make me sad. If I could just somehow shift my perspective on it, I could make all of it joyful, happy somehow. Like is it like, how many things are there?
dude,
Probably
like,
a lot.
endless, man. There's just endless, and they just constantly come at you. One example that I think of instantly in my life is, so I have some floaters in my eyes, just like a couple of them. And I went to the eye doctor like a couple times. They just said basically there's nothing you can do. And my one eye doctor I went to said, I have floaters in my eyes too. And the best thing I can tell you is to become friends with it. And I took that to heart, and now I don't even recognize my floaters for the most part. Like sometimes, like if I'm looking at something like a white, like marker board, whatever, like I'll notice it then. But I've become friends with it, so to speak, and now it's part of my life, and it's not something that I really care about that much.
Yeah, maybe there's a lot of things that we need to become friends with, or we can become friends with.
Yeah.
Not that you have to do anything, but
right.
I don't know, like literally all the things we've already been saying, like that's a great example of the stuff that we were talking about, that like you can become friends with in a way, that you can just become present with. And like, if you start to allow, it's like allowing versus resisting. And that's what all this is. It's like you can resist doing the dishes and be uncomfortable, or you can like accept that you're doing the dishes.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you are. What else is there to do in this moment but wash the dishes?
Yeah, and it's like you might rather be doing, like going outside and playing basketball, or going over to a friend's house, or hanging out with your girlfriend, or going to a movie, whatever it may be. You might rather be doing any of those things, but guess what? You're in this moment, and you're going to have to do these dishes at some point. So why not just enjoy doing them? Obviously, like you said, there's situations where you need those negative emotions and that like fight or flight, so to speak, to, keep you aware in situations. But I think there's a lot more situations where you don't need that, but we do have that. And I think that can help our relationship with ourselves and our life, but also with others too. Because that's something that I think that we all have these biases.
That irritate you.
Yeah. It's like you
learning
can look
to accept them.
Yeah, because you can look at somebody as being angry or something like that, or you could just accept that maybe, hey, they're just not having the best day. It's not anything that I did or anything of that matter. So why don't I be nice to them?
That's so interesting. In my social psych class, we're like just thinking, what's it called? Fundamental attribution bias.
Yeah,
it's like when you assume that the person, if the person is angry, then you like immediately assume that like they're an angry person, instead of assuming that it's situational somehow, that like maybe they just got hit, maybe their cars got hit and they're pissed off.
Yeah.
But our brains automatically, for some reason, it's easier for us to assume that like the person is just that way.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's a lot easier to assume that. And like imagine you're at the store grocery shopping, and you ask somebody or like a worker where something is, and they respond like with a bad attitude, and they just seem pissed off at you for even asking. You could, like we were just explaining there, you could just assume that they, are just a pissed off person and just a mad person, or you could look at that situational factor of, hey, maybe they have something going on in their life right now that isn't so exciting for them, and you can, and your response can change how they feel in that moment too. You could either respond with an attitude like they did to you and be all pissed off at them, and then boom, you got two people clashing at each other. Or you can be really nice to them and be like, hey, thank you, man. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you showing me where this is at. And I guarantee you they respond in a much better way.
Yeah. So I think most people, 99% of people in that situation would just like fight fire with fire. Like they just reflect back the angry mood.
Yeah. And
so like, and I've had experiences in my life where like you will randomly have a gracious person like enter your life, or like you're the angry person, and then you encounter someone that's like nice to you anyway, and for some reason they're able to like take the high road anyway, and like they're not affected by your bad mood, and it's like so refreshing. You're like, oh, it allows you to like take a step back from your anger or your sadness or whatever emotion it is.
Yeah, it almost validates your feelings, you know, and it kind of makes you realize like, okay, like I'm feeling this way, but like maybe I don't even need to feel this way, you know, or not need to, but maybe I can, like, it's possible for me to feel better than I am right now. You know, it's possible for me to escape this like wrath of like anger or anxiety that's going over me.
It can feel like impossible to escape sometimes. Like you kind of give up, or I'll give up. Like I feel angry, I feel frustrated, all that stuff. You're like, I don't know what else to do. Like and then suddenly you see someone else who's able to overcome that anger, or like not reflect the anger back towards you. And you're like, oh, it is a possibility, and like. It's just nice to like realize like there's always possibility for something better and change.
Yeah, like I'm sure in your social psych you maybe learned recently about what's it called? Optimistic perspective. Have you talked about that at all? Yeah. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Basically, just like people who are more optimistic about life and have, you know, generally better, what's it called? Not better, but more positive ways of thinking about life are typically happier people. And I think it can be really easy to get caught in a trap of pessimism and forgetting that it is possible to be happy.
Yeah.
But, you know, sometimes, it just takes somebody to show you that kindness to get you to that point sometimes.
Yeah. Dang. How do you feel about wrapping up the podcast?
That works, man. Let's close it out.
All right. If you're listening to this on YouTube, there we have a Clips channel. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Music, or whatever other random platform, we have 2 YouTube channels. We have the Boundless Enigma YouTube, and then the Boundless Enigma Clips. So check those out. And thank you guys for listening to today's podcast.
Yes,
I realized recently that we have a few new listeners. Our first podcast episode only had like us. We were you, me, and your girlfriend were the only people that listened to that podcast. But now, according to the analytics for our podcast, we have new listeners. We have like 6 different people have listened to it.
So
like
6
different
total.
people. 6 different people, but 11 total listens.
Okay. So the other ones are us.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's like, yeah.
All right. Well, hey, welcome.
That's cool. Welcome to
we appreciate it.
Welcome to the Boundless Enigma.
And drop
We're never
comments.
gonna figure it out.
Drop comments because we would. I'm sure. I know I would love to respond to people and talk to people.
Yeah.
You know, if you have anything to say it. So, love to hear it.
Seriously, ask us questions. If I see a cool question, I'll ask it next podcast.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'd love to answer questions or you know, talk about questions. Maybe not answer, but talk about them. So
sweet.
Yeah.
All right.